Coming up on tonight's episode of Faith versus Culture, a Christian singer criticized for a song about modesty. We'll have the details on that and more coming up next.
To have sex before you marry is a bad idea.
Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
There are problems of sin and habit that cannot be solved outside the person of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, hello and welcome to this episode of Faith versus Culture right here on the CBN News Channel. My name is Dan Andros, and I am joined by journalist and author and good friend Billy Hallowell. Billy, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Can't complain. Wanted to dive right in here, Billy, because a crazy issue popped up, and we'll give you the quick rundown for those of you who have not heard about this story. It's over on faithwire.com. Matthew West had created he's a Christian singer. He created what most thought and initially reacted to was a great, funny, cute song about a dad trying to teach his daughters about how to dress modestly. And he did it in a funny way, kind of cracking jokes in the song about, he's trying to put as many layers as he can on them, etc. It was fun. It was jokey. But apparently not everyone received the message that well. And he got some criticism and there was pushback on it, and people saying that he was insensitive to the daughters and was teaching them that their looks were the only things that the kids were interested in. And so a whole big controversy and brouhaha over this, national headlines, and he ended up he issued a sort of apology, and then he kind of just took the songs down. And Bill, Matthew, and I've met Matthew as well, and he is not the controversy guy. So
no,
this is just not what he wanted at all with this song. I'm sure he was just zero intent to just sort of poke the bear.
He's like the epitome of nice guy, right? Like, I mean, he's
Right.
the nicest guy in the world. And, I would point people back to the fact that he had this song during Thanksgiving called Gobble Gobble, and his whole family was like dressed up as turkeys. And it's actually a great song. It's a fun song. And he's like, there's never been a Thanksgiving song. We're going to do this fun Thanksgiving song. This is what he does. He makes very serious, great music, and he does these little spoofs here or there to entertain people. He did one during the quarantine too. So it's not as though this is the first time he's done this. And so it's strange, the reaction, because when something is a spoof or a joke and it becomes something that is treated as something that's not, it's like the Babylon Bee, right? They're constantly being fact checked for these things that are impossible. They're not even possible to be true, right? It's just weird.
Yeah, and he also did a Four in the Fire with the boy band bit with Jeremy Camp and one other person, I forget who was in it, but that was really funny as well. But I just wanted to say, because the song had lyrics like this, said, modest is hottest, the latest fashion trend is a little more Amish, a little less Kardashian, funny. What the boys really love is a turtleneck and a sensible pair of slacks. Honey, modest is hottest, sincerely your dad. I mean, this is funny. And so then
it's clearly a joke.
It's clearly a joke. And but some of the comments, because as you mentioned, the Today Show, NBC, all these people covered it, and they wrote, they had some comments on there. This is triggering for me. Purity, modesty, culture is toxic in so many ways. And another pastor changed the song and said, well, if I catch you doing dances on TikTok, wear what you want, girl, just go off. Now, I'm going to say that seems like terrible advice, Billy. I don't know. I mean, what if they show up in their underwear or something like that? Like, are you just not going to say anything? Wear what you want? I mean, the world seems like it's gone a little mad here.
Not only is it terrible advice, it's like, okay, you've gone to TikTok. You've taken your complaint to TikTok for attention for yourself. It's sort of like, you could, if you're really that upset about what Matthew West has said, why don't you go and talk to Matthew West about it instead of making a video for your own glory? But yeah, I mean, listen, you read those lines. Those lines are clearly a joke. And I would point people back to every movie and TV show that's ever been made, and also real life, where the girl comes downstairs and the dad and the mom are like, go back upstairs and change. You're not going to wear that out. It's that dynamic, right? This is the reason this is being brought up is it's something that happens all the time in real life. No parent wants their kid to be walking around, in something that they deem inappropriate. But I got to tell you, the thing about this that is probably the most troubling is that people are reacting more to this than they do to some of the stuff that appears on TV at 8 p.m. that kids are seeing, that other people are seeing. Some of the stuff that we know is not good and not healthy. And it's like that just passes with flying colors. But a guy joking about a common experience among many individuals and families is somehow doing something inappropriate.
Yeah. And I mean, and when we look at the Bible, this is not like this is some crazy standard that Matthew West and other Christians have invented. But I mean, you look at just one place because it's mentioned many times, but 1 Timothy 2:9, likewise, also women should adorn themselves in respectable apparel with modesty and self-control. So this is a biblical value. And I know that verse, for everyone that's going to finish the verse, this is not with braided hair and gold or pearls or costly attire and like, oh, that's just for that time, braided hair. Well, back then it was different because the heart of that verse is not you can't have braids in your hair. That was how they did it. They'd put their braids up really high. They'd put gold on and all this stuff on them to draw attention to themselves. So it's really a verse about pride and drawing attention to yourself. And so that's the heart behind this. And so I think that's what Matthew West was getting at as well. And it's interesting to me that Christians especially would revolt against this value in having humility, not pride, having modesty and self-control, and this desire to not draw all this attention to yourself. So I'm very curious that Christians are pushing back on this.
Well, and it's especially curious because anybody with, I don't want to be anybody with a brain, I'm just going to say it, watches it and they're like, oh, this is a joke. I mean, they're wearing turtlenecks. His family's in it. It's a joke. And, I think he's obviously got the Kardashian line in there to sort of make light of it. And this is just like what a father is thinking. And I think the critique of, it's teaching them that their only value is that thing. That's actually what culture has been teaching people forever, that their only value is the outside of themselves, right? So it's just a weird critique to me. I understand maybe disagreeing with it. Obviously, the purity culture stuff, it's a big point of contention for people. But the reality is purity is not just something that has to do with what you're wearing or even, abstinence. It has to do with the state of your heart. Right. Brittany De La Mora and her husband, Rich, they talk a lot about this in the work they do. And she's a former porn star, right, who came out of the industry, became a Christian. She talks a lot about what purity really is. And it goes back to that humility. It goes back to all of what we're talking about. So I found the controversy strange, but I also found the responses, people calling it the video disturbing and all of that. It was just sort of like, what? I can't relate to that.
Yeah, and I think to your point about the wrong message being sent and like teaching them that they're worth it all, the boys are only going to be looking at them. He specifically said when he posted it, if I'm not mistaken, that you're in the message and the note to his daughters that he wants them to know that their worth is more than their outward appearance. That God, looks at your inward parts. He looks at your heart. He looks at what you desire, and so. So it seems like he has that down. It's not like he doesn't get it, as you said, very clearly jokes. And another interesting thing, because I do think that there are abuses of this purity culture where, where Christians can take it too far. But I do think a lot of times that these complaints don't really, they're two separate things, right? Like I saw one of the big responses to this from Christians where, you're teaching the women that, and these young girls that, well, the boys' reaction to them is their fault because of how they're dressing. And it's like, I don't think like that absolves them. For you trying to tell someone to dress modestly doesn't absolve, yourself or the boy from whatever reaction they have, right? Like you can dress modestly and then still have whatever people, however they react to you, is still on them, right? But what you can control is still on you. We're still supposed to dress certain ways. And so the Bible tells us and gives us hints on how we should be dressing and what our heart should be behind it.
Well, and I think too, this idea, I mean, look at Hollywood. It's not just females, it's men too. Look at music. For a very long time, music has been something that people have sold, not just with their voices. I mean, this is not a secret. We all know this. And why do things make headlines? They make headlines all the time because of the controversy and people, I mean, Little Nas, let's talk about Little Nas, all these different people who have done these sorts of shock value things. Many of the times it has to do with the way they're dressing or whatnot. So just to me, this is about pointing people, especially for a Christian, right? Pointing people toward Jesus, not toward yourself. And so, but again, we're talking about something that was a joke. It's actually scary to me that we're living in this culture where the Babylon Bee talks about, CNN is like washing their news stories and they have a picture of and people are fact checking it. It's like, come on, people. Like, why are we? And again, disagreement is fine. I think if you're going to make a TikTok video, though, you're going to put it out there, it's very evident that your intent is to get attention on yourself now, not to actually make a point. So that part of it I just found kind of comical. Yeah.
So a very odd debate that has been sparked by really what was an innocent video. So and hopefully Matthew can just move on because, as we were saying, he's not the controversy guy. He's looking to have fun, bring some joy into people's lives with his music, and point people towards Christ. So to that end, let's just hope that this is a blip on the radar for him and his family doesn't have to keep dealing with this I would say fake controversy for the most part. So we'll be back on the other side of the break with more on faith versus culture, back after this.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
This is CBN News Watch.
Thanks for joining us.
Watch breaking news, exclusive stories and programs, credible news reporting.
We show you what's happening in the world and how you can pray about it.
This is CBN News Watch, because truth matters. Weekdays at 5 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. Whoa! It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man coming.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
All right, we're back. Faith versus Culture. Dan Andros here, Billy Hallowell there, talking about this brouhaha over modesty, which is an interesting thing that especially Christians I can understand, Billy, while we wrap this one up and head on to our next story here. I can understand the secular culture being upset about that because they're very, do what you want to do. Who cares? But you would think Christians would be a little more on board with it. Because I think like you were saying, I think parents all share that same goal of not having their kids go out of the house looking crazy or immodest or ridiculous.
Yeah,
you have some standards, right?
100%. I think, listen, have the conversations about purity culture. I think people should not be afraid of those conversations. If somebody feels like something's gone too far, address it, talk about it, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that, like you were saying, there have been abuses of that and whatnot. But I also think that there's this point where you go too far with it. And so for me, again, hearing people call this disturbing, I understand being like, I didn't really like that, but disturbing, that's just a weird one. Anyway, we could go on about this because I think it's so, but it does encapsulate where we are, right? We can't even agree on a spoof video.
Yeah. Yeah, it's wild. So, all right, if you missed that conversation, head back. We tackled that in the last segment. But I want to move on now to this group of atheists in Mississippi who are suing the southeastern state over its new license plates, which display the phrase "In God We Trust." So, newsflash, atheist mad. They're claiming that the motto is rooted in deep hostility toward non-believers, which I would strongly argue against that. But one of the plaintiffs, Jason Allen Griggs, said that because of the license plate design, he's forced to profess a religious idea that I do not believe. I mean, I'm just going to interject as I'm reading these comments. Wait until they take a closer look at that dollar bill. But yeah, I just wonder who goes around actually like letting that carry so much weight in your life. But what's written on a license plate or on the money. But he said, imagine a Christian having to drive around with "In No God We Trust" or "In Allah We Trust." And so there's the lawsuit there. So, but I think this is an indication as Christians for culture. These are the sorts of things that would probably have gotten laughed out of court previously, but now I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen now.
Well, I mean, imagine a culture where Christians subsidize schools that tell their children that their children came here by accident and that nothing really matters.
Right.
Yeah, I think, it's like, listen, we're all going to have things we don't like, right? I mean, there are going to be things we don't like in public arenas. This has been, and I don't know anybody's heart in this particular story, but this "In God We Trust" debate has been going on for decades. There was a guy, Michael Newdow, he was an attorney and an emergency room doctor a while back, had sued numerous times. There have been numerous lawsuits over trying to strip it off of money. And I think it's off of money and trying to remove it from the pledge, I believe, in different places. And they have all failed. What is interesting about this case is that they may have a stronger argument because I believe they're compelled to pay for the license plates in some way. So if the state were to change that, it'd be interesting to see how this lawsuit would change, because that seems to be one of the sticking points for them. But yeah, you're right. Is it possible that if this wins, let's say this wins, then it could be used to try to strip it off of money or some other place?
Yeah, and you have a great point there about the schools, because it's interesting. Most places you don't have a school choice, so it's like, the same complaint there about, well, they should not make me pay to go to a different place where or to have a different license plate. Well, it's funny because nobody seems to be in favor of vouchers on that side of the argument to let me take my kids to a place where they're not going to openly say, you know what, we don't talk about that God person here because that's bad. You keep that at home, young man. A lot of people might not want to send their kid into that environment, but we don't seem to have that same choice. So
yeah, it's interesting to me. I mean, this "In God We Trust," this phrase it's been something that has been a sticking point for atheists. They don't want to see that phrase on anything. And when I say they, I mean activists. There are plenty of atheists who the majority of atheists probably don't care, but some people do. And so we'll have to see where it goes. I feel like there's a reason you keep trying to get something like this removed, because once you get that victory, once you have that one win, it then becomes the thing that is used to say, look, and then it takes like the Supreme Court continuing to rule on these random different pieces of the puzzle to settle these things. But yeah, we'll have to see where it goes. I do think, though, it would not shock me because if you're forced to pay for a different one, that could be like the loophole.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right, though. I think about the pushing these court cases to try to make it a standard. It's the same thing with Jack Phillips, who I don't know if we've talked about it since last time we've done the show together, Billy, but he lost that case from the transgender activist attorney who called him the day that the victory that he had against in the gay wedding cake case that he won. That same day when the media is all over him, this trans activist attorney calls him and basically comes up with a little trap in order to trap Jack Phillips there, and said like, well, we'd like a cake celebrating a gender transition. And we want it, pink and blue. And then that was the phone conversation. And so then he said he wouldn't make it. And the judge rules, well, a pink and blue cake is just a generic cake. And so they ruled in favor of the transgender activists. So I just think they're trying to get these court cases in here so that then they can then move that into other areas and keep trying to remove God and Christians into the fringes.
Yeah, no, and I think, it's really interesting because there was another case in Colorado, if you remember, a few years back when this first happened. There was, I believe it was a pastor who went to a bakery and was like, I want 2 Bible-shaped cakes with verses from Leviticus on them, written out on them about homosexuality, and the baker declined. And so then he went and complained to the same commission, and the commission said, well, technically, and this is actually a really interesting part of this case, we will allow her to decline making the cakes because it has a message on it, right? So it's like the law is so strange. There's all these weird little things. It actually says something. Now, Jack would, I think, argue, I can't speak for him, Jack Phillips, that you are saying something with a cake, whether there's words on it or not.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, it's super interesting.
Yeah, and then the phone call was an explicit. That's where he was trying to say, like, they specifically gave the intention on the phone call. So, and then tried to get around it by saying there was no message on the cake. So,
and they're appealing, by the way, they're appealing that case. This team,
indeed. Which the poor guy just can't sit there and run his business. He's got to keep dealing with these activists all the time. It's crazy. So definitely keep him in your prayers. But we'll be back. We got one more segment, and I want to hit the provision at the SBC that nobody's talking about, but it's a big one. We'll cover that next.
When I came to Regent University, it's like the world opened up. I felt like I needed to advance my career and go back to school. Regent was a perfect fit for me. The Regent professors are world class. You are equipped. The focus of the faculty is on each individual student, whether it's online or in person. You become a part of Regent's family. You carry with you not just the content and the knowledge, but the confidence to understand that we can be significant in the world.
Regent University. Follow your path.
Nigerian Christians
in Iran are routinely arrested.
Catholic Christians continue to suffer.
In times of trial and affliction, you need to know the truth.
One of the fastest growing Christian populations in the world.
Join Wendy Griffith and George Thomas for Christian World News.
Young people are the ones who are open to the gospel.
Powerful stories of suffering and hope that affect all Christians. Saturday night at 6 on the CBN News Channel. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
All right, welcome back to Faith versus Culture. Dan Andros here, Billy Hallowell there. I want to talk about the SBC provision that was voted on their resolution, I guess, on abortion that nobody was talking about because all these other big issues with critical race theory were taking sort of center stage. The new president and all of that was taking the center stage. So basically, this resolution had some very strong wording on where they stand on abortion, and it passed, and it called for the, quote, immediate abolition of abortion without exception or compromise. And so, Billy, I think this is what we're seeing, the latest salvo in sort of a growing debate within Christian and pro-life circles about how do we fight abortion incrementally or all in one swoop here with strong wording like this, just calling a spade a spade. So what are you seeing on this front?
Yeah, it's interesting because, one side will tell you when you talk to the abortion clinics and others, oh, Americans want Roe versus Wade to stay. And when you ask the question a specific way like that, the majority will say, yeah, Roe versus Wade should stay. But that's not a good measure. The better measure is how restricted should abortion be? And when you start to ask that question, it gets super interesting because the majority of the country would like to cap abortion at 3 months, including the majority of pro-choice people. And so this is why how you ask questions is so important. Now, that doesn't solve the question or the problem here of how far you go with the language on it or the push. But if you were to start there, if you were to say we're going to ban abortions, and maybe you'd have exceptions, maybe not, but we're going to ban abortions after 3 months, the majority of the country actually supports that. That's crazy to me because nobody had ever really presented that to me until you start digging into those details. I think you're going to see the country get more pro-life, and it's continued to happen slowly. Part of the fear, I think, on the behalf of those in the pro-life movement who are like, wait, maybe we should start slow, is that there could be a ricochet or a hard pushback on that. But you could at least start at that 3 month point, and you'd have majority support.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting debate because you're right. Like it could either fail and backfire big time by going more bold with the language, or the other side says, well, yeah, you've had some restrictions put into place, but look how many abortions are still taking place. So there's valid arguments on both sides, and so it'll be interesting to see how it goes forward. But that is a debate growing within church circles and one to keep an eye on. So, Billy Hallowell, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it as always, and we'll be back to wrap it up on the other side of the break.
Christians around the world are standing with the Israelis. But why? In CBN's free magazine, Friends of Israel, you'll discover why Christians are supporting the Jewish state, how Israel is fulfilling prophecy as a light to the nations, and ways you can pray for the people of Israel. Israel needs the support of friends like you. Call now or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Friends of Israel.
Heavenly Father, we do thank you for the work of your Spirit, Lord God, with this movement of getting the Bible,
yes,
Lord, into public schools.
Watch The Prayer Link. Tuesday morning at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
All right, that is all the time we have for this episode of Faith versus Culture. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great week. We'll be praying for you, and we'll see you back here next time. God bless.